Okay, so I was thinking about doing this last year or 2 years ago. We're getting Star Wars movies every year, so I thought I should have an updated list of what my favorite Star Wars movies are, and just before a new movie comes out, I'll reassess my list and tell you guys what I like the best and what I don't like. So here is my top 9 favorite Star Wars movies. Yes, that's including the Clone Wars. And speaking of the Clone Wars, at my number 9 at the bottom of my list is the Clone Wars. As most of you guys already know, it wasn't really intended to be a movie. It was supposed to be the first 3 episodes of this season, and they kind of try to just make it into a movie and put it out in theaters. I watched it on the day it came out in 2008, mostly because I was just a fiend for Star Wars and I wanted to watch anything Star Wars related, and it had been 3 years since Revenge of the Sith came out, so it felt like it was a new Star Wars movie, even though it was a very bad experience. At number 8, I have Attack of the Clones. If you would have asked middle school me where that one ranked, it probably would have been somewhere in my top 3. Me and my brother, I don't know how many times we watched that and reenacted what Anakin and Obi-Wan were doing. Like, I think I always played Anakin, he always played Obi-Wan Kenobi, and we went the whole movie with our little toy lightsabers reenacting that movie. But as it's aged, it has a really, really bad romance, and some of the plot that's going on with the CIS and the assassinations and the clones and how that came about wasn't the best. At number 7, I have The Phantom Menace. Again, if you asked elementary school me, middle school me, how I thought about that movie, it probably would have ranked in my top 3. But, you know, as it's aged, I don't think it's as bad as Attack of the Clones. I still think that it feels like a Star Wars movie more than Attack of the Clones did, or in the sense that, I mean, I think all the Star Wars movies feel like Star Wars movies. I'm not going to say that any of them don't feel like Star Wars movies, whatever that means to whatever Star Wars fan you are. But The Phantom Menace, to me, I felt more engaged than I was with Attack of the Clones or the Clone Wars. Of course, you got to give props to the Darth Maul and Obi-Wan fight. Qui-Gon as well, even though he got, you know, jacked up at the end. But that fight was awesome. The pod racing, a little bit too long, especially if you watch the extended versions, which have like almost a, what was it, like a 30-minute pod racing scene. And, you know, Jar Jar Binks. I actually don't have a huge issue with Jar Jar Binks. I know that's like a meme and like everyone like is supposed to hate Jar Jar Binks. I actually don't really hate him all that much. At number 6, I have Rogue One, which wasn't my number 6 when Rogue One came out. Initially, okay, I'll talk about what my number 6 and 5 are because they're kind of like the same in a sense. My number 6 is Rogue One. My number 5, if I'm doing this correctly, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 is The Force Awakens. So if you would have asked me this last year after watching Rogue One, I would have said Rogue One was a better movie than The Force Awakens. But upon repeat viewings, it's actually kind of hard to rewatch Rogue One, especially that slog in the middle. I feel like it is a bit unbalanced in that sense of like if I'm trying to sit down and just watch a movie. I think The Force Awakens does a much better job of properly, I'm not gonna say properly paced, but a movie that is paced more to my liking, something that is consistent throughout its 3-act structure and its arc. I did have my issues with The Force Awakens, of course. I don't have issues with the filmmaking of The Force Awakens, so let me make that clear. Like, some people go out of their way and say like The Force Awakens is like the worst movie ever. That's really ridiculous. If you think that, you probably only like art house films and only watch like the most brilliant subtitled movies ever, and you're like that pretentious hipster person. The Force Awakens is a long shot away from a bad movie. Is it a good Star Wars movie? Yeah, it's even a good Star Wars movie, but it's just not where I wanted the world to go. Like, after watching it, I had this feeling of not loving it, and I wanted to love it, and I just liked it. I think it's just a really solid film that is very enjoyable to watch, but in terms of where it took the world of Star Wars and how the galaxy evolved, or did not evolve, in my opinion, did not evolve, that's what I meant to say, isn't really why I liked taking it, but I'm hoping that The Last Jedi will do a lot better. But yeah, sorry, going back to Rogue One, again, I think that's a really good movie. I think the first act is pretty good. I think the third act is amazing. That's like the best part about that movie, and I think that's the reason why someone, when they're leaving the theater initially, or thinking about that movie a week later, thinks about that movie being very great because it has a very good ending. And that's very important in stories, whatever you're doing. If you have a pretty good ending, that's the last thing that that person is going to think about. And going out of that, you're going to be thinking, oh, that was a really great movie. But upon repeat viewings, it's not something I can watch all the way through. I kind of like try to skip through the middle most of the time. My number 4 is Revenge of the Sith. Now, no, I do not think Revenge of the Sith is a better movie than The Force Awakens or even Rogue One, but this is my bias list, and Revenge of the Sith has a lot of meaning to me beyond just the movie itself. It also includes the novelization, the Clone Wars microseries, the Republic comics, books like Shatterpoint, Yoda Dark Rendezvous, the Quinlan Vos series of comics, so much that was built up to Revenge of the Sith that I went into that movie thinking about. And the way that I watch Revenge of the Sith isn't the way a typical moviegoer would. I'm thinking about all that other stuff that the expanded universe informs to Revenge of the Sith, which makes it a better overall story to me, even though I don't think it's a better film than any of the other Star Wars. If I'm basing this just on like filmmaker and it merits as a story or as a film on celluloid, it probably would rank in my bottom 3. But as an overall story and interaction with Star Wars, sorry, it's my number 4. My number 3 is Return of the Jedi. I really like that mostly for the ending. Again, that's the thing I'm bringing back up again about endings. The Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker stuff at the end is really great. I didn't really care for the Ewoks. I mean, in terms of people saying like, oh, it was ruined by Ewoks. I never really cared that much. I was not so much indifferent, but I don't think it ruined anything about Star Wars for having Ewoks in Return of the Jedi, or defeating Imperials, or the 501st Legion, and blah, 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 blah. Return of the Jedi is a fun movie. I still think the original trilogy has a charm about it, or maybe it's the core characters I like so much. I like Luke, Leia, and Han so much, and that dynamic, and just the story, the simple story, and the simple storytelling of the original trilogy, and by extension, Return of the Jedi, that I like the most. My number 2 is A New Hope. It's the classic Star Wars tell. I've rewatched it recently. It's actually a pretty funny movie, especially when Luke, Leia, and Han meet each other. Even when Obi-Wan had his little chats with Han Solo and stuff like that. I think it's actually it's a well-paced movie, except for the very beginning with the C-3PO and R2-D2 scenes where they're like just going through the desert. That's kind of boring, and that's kind of like 1970s sensibilities. And for some people, it might not age too well, but for me, it's my number 2, man. It's pretty dope. It's Star Wars. And then, of course, my number 1, and I don't think anything's gonna topple this unless The Last Jedi is freaking amazing, is Empire Strikes Back. It has everything I love about Star Wars, and that's just the swashbuckling, the deep storytelling, the dynamic between the family trials, tribulations. I actually don't really care that much for the big twist in Empire Strikes Back. I don't really care about the Darth Vader being Luke's father. That never really mattered to me. It was all about the Yoda scenes with Luke and Han and Leia, and their snippiness throughout that entire film, and that tension and that romance, and you know, the big scene of I love you, I know, like stuff like that feels like Star Wars. And of course, Lando Calrissian is dope. But that whole movie is just so perfect on all those levels. And I feel like it's the most Star Wars movie, even though in a way it's the not most Star Wars movie, because it is kind of a side story in a way. It's not really part of the it's more of a transition film, if that makes sense. Like it's between the beginning where we introduce the Star Wars and the ending where we have, like, you know, the conclusion. But it still is the best. Like the filmmaking of it, the lighting schemes, the acting, the performances, the storytelling, that's the best one for me. But that's it. That is my ranking. Let me know what your favorite Star Wars movies are in the comments below. I'll do this for other series as well. I'll do it for Game of Thrones and Harry Potter and all that jazz. But oh, hey, look at that. The sirens that are always at my house. Gotta love my neighborhood and all the ambulances and the police officers. And that's it, guys. See you later. Peace, love, and may the Force be with you. Always.